The most impressive escape artist of all time always managed to do the impossible. Whether it was escaping handcuffs or being buried alive, there seemed to be no limit to what he could do. But there were always skeptics suspicious of his true abilities. And while many may know his amazing feats, few know about the conspiracies that surround his untimely death. Today, we're discussing the life and death of Harry Houdini. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me, freaking out about this case, maybe hearing it for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
First off, who doesn't love magic? Okay, sorry, love magic. Kid, you're growing up, you're watching the show. I know I might pull this out of people's memories. The show where there was the magician that gave away all the secrets, but he wore a mask, so that way he wasn't. No one knew who he was.
Yeah, the masked magician.
Yeah, the masked magician. And I was like, whoa, that's how they did it. It's all a lie, but I love it. And Harry Houdini just seems like, you know, the GOAT, right?
Oh yeah.
If Arnold's like the number one for bodybuilding, and then the Harry Houdini is the Arnold for magic. And so, I mean, conspiracies around him, that sounds so interesting. Like, why would there be conspiracies in the first place? So there's so much room for anything in the imagination and all that. And I don't know. I mean, again, this is one of those things where, I'm probably closing in on 300 episodes.
Yeah, what are we at, Christian? Like 280 something?
We're on 282.
282.
Yeah, closer to 300 than 250.
My favorite band, Blink 282.
Damn. Blink 282. And still, there's, you know, like you said that, I was like, oh, Harry Houdini, hell yeah. Like,
yes.
Let's talk about him. Let's get into it. I'm excited.
Yeah, so like you said, we all know Harry Houdini. Some of us might know that he took an untimely punch to the gut and then kind of died soon thereafter. I'm going to break it all down because the man died at the youngest age of 52 on Halloween of all days. And yeah, the conspiracies around his death are so fascinating that you might think that you're like, okay, well, maybe somebody says this or that. They start to get pretty deep. It's pretty wild that we say this a lot, that we haven't covered this yet.
So you said punch to the gut?
Okay, your whole mind is about to be blown.
Was this, like, instinctively, my mind goes that this was an act. It was the part of the magic trick, a punch to the gut. But I'm also like, what's so magical about a punch to the gut?
Okay.
Was he some magic? Like, what the? Okay. This man just getting beat up now.
You're not far off. I'm going to walk you through every moment of this man's life. Obviously not going into the nitty gritty like when he lost his first tooth or anything, but I'm going to walk you through his life, how he made his way to the States, and then how he found his way into magic, illusions, performance, how that then evolved into stunt performance. You think of like a modern day equivalent, maybe David Blaine, somebody who went from illusions, mentalist acts to more stamina based. Like he stays in a box for a week with no food and water and he's on display doing feats like that, like human feats of mind and body. And so I'm going to walk you through the evolution there. And then, of course, laying the groundwork that led up to his untimely death, and then kind of plucking at a few of those threads then and saying this and that. There's, I'd say, like 3 or 4 conspiracies that tumble around that untimely death.
Okay.
You know, I mean, when you have such a big figure and they die at a relatively young age, there's always going to be a little bit of like, well, was there more to it? But there's a lot of meat on this bone. But as we dive in, I say this a lot, redwebpod.com. It's our home base. It's the number one way to support us. And we got a lot going on over there. So as always, this Thursday for everybody here in the RSS feed, scary stories coming out. Then on Friday at Red Web Pod, we have our next episode of Break Room. Last Friday, if you want something right now, we began what we're calling Enter the Matrix. We explored Matrix 1 in a very organic movie club. And then in that episode, we decided let's spend May exploring the rest of the Matrix, at least the trilogy. So come head over, support us directly, and get some good goodies for it as well. And speaking of goodies, we've talked about it a lot. We've talked about it for almost a year now. Mother's Day is finally upon us. And if there's a mom in your life, or maybe you just know a couple of moms, head to store.redwebpod.com, and we got a few things, just a few simple things to show the moms in your life some love and to highlight the mom's love of true crime. Because as we all know, moms heart true crime.
Moms do love true crime. I mean, like to the point where it seems like it's like comfort.
Right. There's something dark there.
I'm just gonna put on my stories.
Wait, hold on.
I'm just gonna put my stories in the
Mom's just putting on her stories.
I'm like, my lady, those aren't just stories. Like these are brutal cases that you're listening to. It's soothing you to bed at night.
The earphone falls out and it goes, and the knife slid across their neck as if, you're like, whoa, Mom, what? I thought this was rom-com or like a romantic scene.
I'm like, I don't know if what's worse. Like maybe you should be listening to Smut instead of like,
Listen.
You sure you don't want to listen to Smut instead?
Right. A little bit of both. I find comfort, moms always have that aura of comfort. And now, having been Miyagi'd by all the true crime that they listen to, they're kind of like, they know what to do in any situation. So moms are Braveheart. You know what I mean?
Moms are Braveheart.
And moms heart true crime. So we have a few things, maybe a sticker, a mug. We're still kind of in development in the lab, tinkering away. So like I said, store.redwebpod.com. Support moms, support true crime, and support our show. But with that, we got to dive in. There's a lot to talk about with Harry Houdini. So let's start with the obvious. Harry Houdini was a famous magician, illusionist, and stunt performer, and there are a lot of photos of him online. I'm going to take one of the classic ones and give it to you here, Fredo, so we can put that face to the name so you can picture it as we go along.
Oh, yeah, I've seen this one. Handsome lad right here, doing magic.
All shackled up.
It's like bondage level. Those are like the thickest cuffs.
Yeah.
You know, you go to like a rave. I don't know. This is what I think I see at a rave. I don't remember been to one.
He's like, I've been to raves, but I don't remember them.
Or I guess like a Taylor Swift concert. They're all passing around bracelets and they just have like a forearm full of it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like that, but with cuffs. So it's like, that's heavy duty stuff.
It is.
He's got thick ankle like cuffs there. Maybe some kind of weight because there's some too heavy pieces in the bottom of that. He's got a little... Was it like a penguin suit on? But he's got some style. He's got the sleeves rolled up and everything.
I like that.
Okay.
That Billy Joel kind of look, it's like I'm in a suit, but I'm casual.
Yeah.
I'm realizing now Harry Houdini is the perfect middle sliver of the Venn diagram for moms. Not to bring moms back, but mom's always on the mind. It's like a little bit of bondage. He's tied up, a little romantic-y. And then on the other side, it's like there's some true crime happening here.
Yeah, I could see that.
And then, of course, he's got the muscles.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can see the moms getting into that and being like, "Well, tie me up like that."
Right. I want to escape. Actually, maybe I don't.
Oh no, I can't escape. Reverse psychology.
Do you think that's what Harry Houdini said? Anytime he's like, "Oh no, I can't escape." Shapapa.
Oh, 100%. And then he's like, "Shabang!" And he's just like,
oh, that's his catchphrase.
Yeah,
Shabang. And then there's an explosion somewhere. Okay. What's interesting about Houdini, and a lot of people might not know this, is his original name. He was born as Eric Weiss. This was March 24th, 1874. Originally, he was born in Budapest. He did immigrate to the United States at the age of 4 years old, along with his mother, Cecilia Steiner, his father, Rabbi Mayer Samuel Weiss, and he had 4 brothers. In total, he had 5, but the 5th brother was born there in Wisconsin. Then in 1878, the family landed in Appleton, Wisconsin, and changed their name from the Hungarian spelling of Weiss to the German spelling. So I'll spell it out. It's W-E-I-S-Z. Now it's W-E-I-S-S. Eric, aka Houdini, also changed the spelling of his name from E-R-I-K to E-H-R-I-C-H. So this was ultimately, from all I can tell, to better assimilate into American culture, to be better read and understood. It's kind of simple as that. But Houdini would often point to Appleton, Wisconsin as his hometown, even claiming throughout the years of his life that he was born there, which is not true, but it does show that he had a very firm attachment to his time there and growing up there. Now, the reason they moved there is because his father again, was a rabbi. He was hired by the Zion Reformed Jewish congregation to essentially be the first rabbi to move to that area for that purpose. And he worked that job until 1882 when he was let go. And after he was let go, the family actually decided to move down to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and this is kind of where they unfortunately fell into poverty. A few years later, in 1887, Houdini and his father then moved to New York City and began living in a boarding house on East 79th Street, and they themselves were there for a little bit of time until the rest of the family could follow over once they found a more permanent residence for everybody. But because of this, Houdini started working in the arts at the age of 9. In fact, he was a trapeze artist at this very young age, almost like a Robin to the Batman situation. He was known as Eric, the Prince of Air, and his magic career began very early on in his life. Just 4 years after that, in 1891, he would have been about 13 years old, he began performing under the stage name of Harry Houdini. So what's interesting, and we have some confidence in this, but there's some room for wiggle here, but it's believed he got Houdini from the French magician that he did admire, so this is confident, Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin, and so he pulled from that the last name Houdini. And some believe that he got Harry from an American magician that he admired named Harry Keller. Others say that Harry was simply derived from the nickname of Eric, shortened to Harry. I said that French-wise. I don't know why I said it like a French person, but like Harry, taking off the hard K at the end of Eric, and then that turned into Harry.
Got it.
Either way, it's a clever alliteration of a name.
It's just fascinating because it's like learning so much detail about him.
Yeah.
You know, poverty to performing, and now is possibly pulling his name from different sources.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
At 13.
Yeah, at 13, which is okay. He's out there and he's getting it. So he's got some drive, he's got some motivation, which, I mean, says a lot, right? When you look at people that are so successful, it's like they're wired differently.
Wired differently. You feel that presence when you meet them. Not to put people on a pedestal, but yeah, I get what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like there's an energy, there's a tenacity.
Yeah, it still takes a certain kind of person, you know what I mean, to reach a certain level. And it doesn't mean like you naturally have to be someone that has drive, but you do it, right? And when you do it, people feel that. So
you got to drive through a lot of adversity to get to the rarefied air that Houdini reached.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is like that name, I think it's a great name. Maybe it's just because I've heard it off the cuff so much, but think of any username, Task Force, that you've ever come up with at the age of 13. They were probably all like embarrassing or he comes up with Harry Houdini. Come on.
That's pretty good, dude. That's pretty good. The HH, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yep.
It rolls off the tongue. It's memorable.
Sure.
It's good.
It's inspired by other big names, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of his first acts was in 1891. This was with his good friend Jacob Hyman, and they called themselves the Brothers Houdini, and they took their act on the road. They performed several card and sleight of hand magic tricks throughout small theaters in New York State and in the Midwest. And then in 1894, but some reports say 1893, Hyman, his partner, was replaced by Harry's younger brother, Dash, or proper name is Theodore Hardin, who was also known for his physical prowess in the same way that Houdini eventually was. I think his claim to fame in the magic realm was actually taking the straitjacket escape, and instead of doing it behind the scenes or behind a curtain, he would do it in front of the audience. And so that's a very famous thing that Houdini became known for. There's a video online where you can see Houdini hanging upside down by his ankles, straitjacketed, people all in the street just watching, and you see him kind of shrug it off. At the end, I'll show you that video.
Yeah, it's wild that like he did street performances, but it is what he's known for. Like when I think of Harry Houdini, I think, okay, yeah, he's, you know, chained up and stuff like that. It also shows like the level of, I guess, inflation with art. You know what I mean? And specifically this kind of art, where if you did that now, people would be like, okay,
yeah,
you know, you need something grander. But back then that was enough to, if that was his signature act or signature move, what he's known for, it's like, that doesn't seem too wild comparatively to like nowadays, but
it was cutting edge.
Yeah, during the time.
The inflation of it, or like the escalation, always one-upping until it's like into dangerous territory, essentially. So that same year, 1894, at their show in Coney Island, Harry actually met another performer. Eventually, he's going to swap through people, it seems, but her name was Wilhelmina Beatrice Rahner, aka Bess. The pair fell in love and got married, and Bess then became his stage assistant. As the years passed, the traveling show became a little bit tiresome for the young couple, and then in 1898, Houdini seriously considered quitting magic altogether and thought about opening up his own magic school, maybe passing on the knowledge rather than trying to figure out how to elevate and escalate and perform. I want to remind you, like, he hasn't really hit it big. You know, he's moved throughout the Midwest and the New York area, but right now it's still a pretty small act. So he's thinking about starting this school, and the following year, they actually go back on the road for whatever reason, but this time their act would become greater than ever, and it would change their lives. In 1899, Harry introduced handcuff escapes into his routine, and this is where it seems to move from that quintessential magic into more of the cutting-edge stunt performance that maybe was familiar, but doing it in a way that really wowed people. And while performing in St. Paul, Minnesota, Harry was scouted by a man named Martin Beck. This was a talent manager who was well known for vaudeville theater. Beck was impressed with Houdini's handcuff act and challenged him to then escape from Beck's own handcuffs. He says, "I want to know if those are trick. I brought these from my bedroom. Slap these puppies on. Let's see if you can do it."
Yeah, I pulled them from underneath my pillow.
And he goes, "Well, Beck, my. Well, of course, Houdini's act was not a trick. It was very much the practical art of like picking a lock and sleight of hand. It wasn't fakery by any means, and so Houdini was able to complete this quite easily. And after that, Beck goes, "You've passed my test," and invited him to join the Orpheum Circuit, which was a chain of vaudeville theaters that was dominating America at the time. And then, for the next 20 years, Houdini would spend time touring across America and even found greater success going back over across the pond to tour across Europe. And this is really where he elevates to become the Houdini that we all know today and was filmed and kind of becomes the man that stands the test of time.
Interesting. So he was talent scouted.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, there's so many stories like that. I mean, Bruce Willis was a bartender, supposedly. His story was a bartender, and then there was someone that scouted him to try for a role, and then from there became actor.
That's so interesting. Like he just had the right look, or?
Yeah, he had the right look for the role, and he liked his like tone and his presence, and he was like, "Hey, you want to try for this role?" And he did, and became a huge actor.
Yeah. Harrison Ford was a carpenter, and sometimes a fire is kindled and sparks become ablaze.
You just never know that natural connection like that. And so yeah, it's just pretty cool. It's like that's how he got his start. And so like it's been a thing for like a while, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not just like it's a new modern thing or something that happened started in the 80s or 70s. No, back then you scout someone, you're like, you got it, and then keep running with it.
Yep. I mean, not to continue on the tangent, but you're right. Some of the greatest names, I mean, and we could throw them all out there, but some of the most influential names across all of art come from just the random happenings of a talent scout. I forget his name. It's Brian something, but the guy who discovered the Beatles playing in the cellars of Germany.
Damn.
And or in the cellar room, and like, let's put some polish on them. He slaps them in suits and kind of shores them up a little bit, and off they go to become the Beatles as we know them.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild. And so I think something very similar kind of happened here. So yeah, right time, right place.
Yeah.
So what's interesting is he's scouted, 20 years are going by, he's touring America, touring Europe, and he is perfecting, he's refining this routine. And in actually 1908, he starts to realize other magicians, to your point, right, are starting to copy his act.
Yeah.
He leaves the handcuff escape behind because he's like, all right, too many other people are doing this. I need to continue being the one that pushes the frontier, not the copycat that just kind of rides the wave. And there's a room for all of it. There's a role for everybody there, but he's the innovator, and that's what he wants to hold himself to. And he's moving on now to larger, more high-risk escapes. These elevated stunts included things like, and this, I had to get a photo of this because it was so confusing when Kat was talking about this, but one thing was escaping from a water-filled milk can. Take a look at this next photo I have for you.
What?
Yeah.
How big is this milk can? What
Exactly. That's what I'm thinking. I'm like, is this like a gallon of milk?
Oh my God.
Look at, he's in there.
I mean, it's big, but not as big as you think.
It's enough to like tuck a man fetal position into, maybe, you know.
It's enough to uncomfortably hide a body.
I mean, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And you see the padlocks there on the floor at the bottom. So the lid would be closed and then it would be padlocked. And honestly, I don't know how he does it if it's padlocked from the outside, but that's his allure.
I was just about to say, I don't know how the heck you would do this.
Yeah.
But what is that, like 2 officers, constables or something like that?
It does seem to be that way, yeah.
They're there. There's 3 men behind him. Each his head's poking out of this like milk canister.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably like, what, 4 to 5 feet tall.
Yeah, I'd say about that. 3.5, 4 feet tall, no wider than 2.5 feet, no wider than like an average man's shoulders.
Yeah.
At the widest point, the throat of it where he's getting in, he's definitely like needing to roll his shoulders forward, I'm sure. But yeah, very impressive. I mean, he did a lot of other things, escaping from straitjackets, overboard cargo boxes. He was buried alive, all sorts of things. In fact, before he left handcuffs behind, he elevated it to the next level. I do have another photo for you here, Fredo, but you see where his hands are handcuffed behind him, and he's kind of got almost like a harness that's continuing to strap his upper arms down. And then he dives into the water and he does it all underwater.
Yeah, so he's tied the hell down. And there's, dude, it's like a dock and the bridge in the background, and it is packed, dude, like concert level packed.
Yes.
Full of people. But I've got to say this, and I did not know this about Harry Houdini. This man is absolutely shredded.
He is, dude. Look at those quads.
What do you mean Harry Houdini's jacked? Bro, he's to separate. I mean, like, I'm talking about like low body fat percentage shredded. The man, he lifted weights and he dieted.
All natty, you know what I mean? This is that buff level you don't see. 1908, maybe this is more like end Victorian era, turn of the century. Like, you don't walk around the streets and often see a man built like that.
No, he's in a very low percentage of men. Damn, I didn't know he was so jacked. That's cool too.
This photo's good for that because, and I'm glad you picked up on that, as you would. I know you're a gym goer. Because we're gonna pluck on a few of those threads as we continue.
Oh, okay.
Because he was very proud of his physical stamina. He was very proud of his body, right? And using it as a tool to perform these stunts. So we'll talk about that. But during this time of working in vaudeville and kind of touring around, he became one of the highest paid vaudeville performers, at least of that time. And he used this fame to pivot into movies, and he started to perform these escape acts on screen. And although he wasn't the best actor, you know, at over 40 years old, he was just happy that he could immortalize some of these escape routines on film, which still to this day survive. I mean, you could go on YouTube, like I said right now, and see a few of these acts. It's so cool that you can get a glimpse back that far and see him do his thing.
That's cool that you can go back that far and see all that stuff. That's really sick. But then also, I mean, you know, it's for the name. I think, and like the same thing where like the Barbie movie, it's like, it's more so for like, guess who's in the movie, right? Like, and like Barbie had Dua Lipa, right? And she did a song and she was a mermaid that just sat there, but it was like, oh, Dua Lipa, she's in there. You're not expecting Dua Lipa to do some great acting.
Right. Really, you're right. It's the name power, the star power, but it also allowed his stunts to go even further, to break the sound barrier, and now he can be seen in places he could never be, all kind of at the same time, you know? So now it's 1926, he is reaching the height of success, and he's performing his one-man show throughout Broadway, which is incredible. The program at this time was titled simply Houdini, and it lasted an incredible, and I'm sure breathtaking, 2.5 hours.
Damn.
Yeah.
This
acting.
That's like a Christopher Nolan film. Like,
kind of, yeah, dude.
How do you have that much for that long?
I'm sure he had to limit it because they're like, people are going to get antsy, you know, like we need a matinee and we need the evening performance. You can't be doing this for 10 hours, Houdini.
That's a long, long time. I guess you're just going after act and act, but then don't they acts like, I don't know, like maybe 10 minutes each? So you're going through a lot of them, I would assume.
Yeah. You got good volume, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's a lot of showmanship. You know, I've seen Frederick de Silva, the mentalist in Las Vegas. Wonderful time. You should go do it if you're in Vegas. But like, there's a lot of theater and a lot of like hand wavy to like kind of fluffs it out. But I can't imagine that Houdini's walking around fluffing it out. To your point, I feel like this would be a dense 2.5 hours. He did everything from illusions to various escapes that people might have seen in the movies and now wanted to see in person. And at this time, he began moving into spiritualism exposés. I don't know if you knew this about him.
Oh.
And we're gonna talk all about it, but as we've kind of hinted in many other episodes around this time period, the 1920s, spiritualism, especially coming out of the Victorian era, is on the rise. People are becoming obsessed with the idea of, is there life after death? Do ghosts exist? Can we communicate with the other side? It's kind of beginning, the way I see it, just from doing all these episodes, it's kind of beginning this paranormal craze that then becomes UFOs in the mid-century, becomes cryptids, becomes poltergeists throughout the 70s and 80s, and then like kind of now it seems like this homogenized everything all at once, but it kind of, I think, began that trend.
I mean, it seems like he's just such a trailblazer, right? When people started copying him, he went, let me elevate it. And I'm sure people started copying that. And he's like, you know what? Let me bring a supernatural, spiritual type of feel to it.
Or he kind of goes in a different way.
Really?
I don't want to stop you there and like disagree, but he kind of takes that spiritualism, right? The belief that the mind can live on after death, that the dead can communicate with the living. He kind of goes in the opposite direction of all the mediums of the time. But you're right. He's completely on the cutting edge. He's going after all of these arenas on the bleeding edge and in a way that no one else is doing. It's a great observation. And I actually want to hear the rest of your thoughts. But ultimately, Houdini largely denied spiritualism. He claimed that mediums were exactly what he was, a skilled performer and nothing else. To the point where it might be seen as like predatory to see a grieving widow want to talk to their dead child or dead husband or what have you. You know, that could feel a little sinister. We've talked about that with like the Warrens, for example, how you know, it can be healthy to a certain extent, but then there's certain situations or certain people where you start to go, I don't know, man, this feels like it's crossed a line.
I'm interested to see if like the audience starts to turn on him at this point, someone that's beloved, hero turned villain type situation.
Yeah, especially as more people are, you know, starting to kind of have interest in this.
Mm-hmm.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Factor. For some, eating healthy isn't a willpower problem, it's a setup problem. Enter Factor. With Factor, you can hit your nutrition goals this season without the planning, the grocery runs, or cooking. This is why I love Factor. I'm always looking to keep an eye on my macros, make sure I'm eating my vegetables. I want to get that protein in. I want to get my fiber up. And it's a lot to juggle, and I just detest going to the grocery store, if I'm honest. And so I really appreciate Factor for making it turnkey, making it very easy to know what I've got in my fridge, and making healthy, tasty meals super accessible. Factor has meals built around your goals, whether that's weight loss, overall nutrition, more protein, or GLP-1 support. For strength and workout recovery, check out Factor's Muscle Pro collection. Factor meals are fresh, never frozen. They offer over 100 rotating weekly meals, including globally inspired flavors like Mediterranean and Asian, so there's always something new to look forward to. Task Force, head to factormeals.com/redweb50 off and use code REDWEB50 off and get 50% off and free daily greens per box. With new subscription only while supplies last until September 27, 2026. See website for more details. Again, factormeals.com/REDWEB50 off with promo code REDWEB50 off. Well, there was a particular blow up. And there was one instance where he saw one of his great friendships completely collapse. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who was a famed English author, they were close friends, but their disagreement on spiritualism, you know, Doyle was a vocal advocate for spiritualism. And although Houdini was not looking to make an enemy out of him, they had such differing beliefs on it, and they were so stout in their disposition that it did end up ending their friendship. And I'm sure there were lots of people at shows or in the world that might have then, saw some level of disagreement with Houdini and departed from their enjoyment of him from here. But it's so interesting because at this point now his career takes on this different shape. He is much more publicly disagreeing with mediums. In fact, he takes on arguably one of the most famous mediums of all time. Her name was Mina Crandon, but she went by the name of Marjorie. And they were not a high society, but they were pretty well looked at because her husband, for example, was a prominent surgeon in Boston named Dr. Leroy Goddard Crandon. And so that lent some sort of credence to her craft. And it also shows that they were in maybe the more upper echelons of society. But yeah, he kind of like, knowing who he is, knowing where he's been, he's like, a performer knows a performer.
Yeah.
And I think you're performing.
Really? That's like shots fired.
Yeah.
My
and
goodness.
it wasn't even just verbally.
Yeah.
I mean, he went in there.
He came out swinging.
Houdini joins a committee organized by the magazine Scientific American that exposed Marjorie as a fraud after a series of seances. Houdini himself even published a 40-page pamphlet titled, quote, "Houdini exposes the tricks used by the Boston medium Marjorie," end quote.
Oh, so it's like aggressively going at him.
In brief, right, there's a lot I could say here, but in these papers and in his show performances on stage, he is basically debunking. These debunks would often feature Houdini putting on a disguise. And after that, he would go to a seance performance, witness it, be part of it, and once it was completed, he would then go around and reveal the tricks and techniques used to lay out the seance, you know?
That's BM. That's some bad manners right there.
That's some bad manners. I'm picturing now, Christian, I'm curious. He looks pretty tall. I'm curious if you don't mind helping us, Christian, our producer guy in the chair. Let me know how tall Houdini was, because otherwise I'm picturing this buffed man walking in with his world-famous face and just maybe just a small mustache glued on. And then at the end, he goes, "Huzzah! Shazam!
It was me!
It was me!" Yeah, wait, why is his voice that?
It's like, well, yeah,
it
man.
Was me, Houdini!
It was me, Houdini! That's what it is. Oh my God.
me! It was me all along!
Well, look, man, no one's surprised. Houdini. All right, we all knew.
Someone sitting next to him's got a shaky leg going, "I think that's Houdini and a bad mustache." Okay, so what does he do? What does he do at these seances? Well, he completely embarrasses the medium and he exposes it to anybody else who might be there. He goes around and basically points out the hidden wires, the trapdoors, the rigged furniture that might move, bang, or float, you know, all the classic tricks. And sometimes he would even replicate this type of spiritual phenomenon, air quotes, that would be seen at a seance during his stage performances. And so not only does he go out and debunk it in front of people, he then brings it to his show on Broadway so people can, it's kind of hoisted in front of them. And for better or worse, I think that there's something to that. You know, like, you obviously need to maintain a level of respect, but if you see this in like crossing over with John Edwards, I think I've mentioned a few times, there's something really weird about that. And the idea that you're plucking on like threads. I'm getting a name, a J over here, a Joe, a Jan, a John, and then someone goes, my brother died at 13 and his name was Jason. And suddenly he's just pulling on that. And I go like, there's healing that can be done if handled properly,
yes.
But you're creating an illusion and using a dead loved one as a puppet, a mouthpiece.
Yeah, and it's just constant fishing for something. It's just, I don't know, man, it's kind of tacky. And
do I want to believe that one could talk to the other side? I think there's something just fundamentally fascinating about that idea, but so far I have yet to see it be done in a convincing manner that has held up to scrutiny. And so, in a way, I think Houdini is performing a service. I don't want to speak for him, but a performer, like I said, sees a performer. Before we move on to his death, Christian, was this man 7'8"?
He was not, actually. His height looks like it depends or varies depending on the sources, but the most commonly agreed upon, they give a range. The most commonly agreed upon, he's about 5'5". Some say between 5'4", 5'7".
Damn. Okay, short king.
Okay.
Dang.
All right.
I guess I'm thrown by this last photo. Let's put that back up. He's about to dive into the water. Everyone behind, I know he stepped on under like a 2-inch
He
platform.
looks so much. He looks like he's a head taller than everybody.
He looks a lot taller.
Was everyone just super short? What do you?
Maybe. Or maybe they saw Houdini and he demanded everyone around him kind of hunch over.
That's true. I need you guys to lean down a little bit, a little buckle
Like-
your knees a little,
like a
just
little-
slightly. Which you can put on some muscle pretty quick when you're shorter because you got your strands of muscles are much shorter.
Sure.
Not to downplay it, but the man is absolutely jacked. But I'm like, oh, okay. He's short.
Oh man, don't rob him of all this. And then you gave him that voice. I think you knew. You said, I'm Houdini. Come on.
I predicted it.
He's catching strays. We're out here putting respect on his name. And yeah, you predicted it. You predicted it. I mean, he's not Houdinalina. I mean, he's not Thumba Houdini. There's a pun there. I'll let Task Force cook that one up. But okay, so we talked a lot about the details of his life. He's very well known and there's a lot going on in there. But now comes the time, I think we got to talk about his unfortunate end. As you may have seen in the earlier photos, the rigorous acts that he performed, this is pre-written, by the way. You saw it, you clocked it right away. He was incredibly fit, okay? He was so fit, in fact, that he would allow the audience to feel his biceps or even punch him in the abdomen. You kind of joked about it, but man, that was part of his act. He would show how unaffected he would be because obviously he would brace, people would punch, and then they go, whoa, because again, this is like abnormal body, this isn't the age of Marvel. But okay, here we come. We're approaching the fateful day. It's October 22nd, 1926, and a few medical students from McGill University were able to visit Houdini in his dressing room at 5 p.m. For context, just a few days earlier, Houdini had lectured at that university about his work debunking mediums and spiritualists, so it's very possible that's how they were aware of him. And so we don't know exactly how they got to the dressing room. I'm sure security was like, whatever, this is Houdini, he can withstand a cannonball. But one student named Jocelyn Gordon Whitehead asked if he could, in fact, hey, Houdini, can I punch you in the stomach? And he immediately nodded and then didn't get a chance, like in this split-second moment, he didn't get a chance to brace his abdominal muscles before the student threw a haymaker into the stomach and then threw a second one. And as the third one's about to come in, it's clear Houdini is a little bit in pain here, and he stops. He stops the third blow from hitting his gut, but depending on the source you look at, some actually report that he received 4 to 5 blows to the unbraced abdomen.
Jeez, this guy was just wailing on him?
He was just wailing. Now, it's unclear if any action was taken against Whitehead after the fact, like in the immediate aftermath, though we know that, and we'll talk about this, he was never detained or arrested or anything. For all intents and purposes, it seems like kind of an accident. He got excited about an act. Houdini said, yes, let's do it. And there wasn't time to prep. After this, Houdini travels 15 hours by train to his next performance, which is a little further away in Detroit, Michigan. He was reportedly in a great deal of stomach pain, which he solely blamed on the punches. And upon arriving at the Garrick Theater in Detroit, his temperature had reached 104 degrees Fahrenheit or 40 degrees Celsius. So the man is cooking. He's running a high temperature. They had a doctor visit the dressing room who then diagnosed him in that moment with acute appendicitis. Now what's interesting, this is like a little fun fact tangent. Marjorie, the famed medium, as I mentioned, her husband was Dr. Crandon. His nickname happened to be Belly Button Crandon because, of all people, this is again just a fun fact, he developed the technique of going through the belly button in order to perform the appendectomy, which is if you have appendicitis, you got to get that thing removed. They go through the belly button to minimize the hideous scars that one might have. I myself had my belly button cut open twice now for various surgeries, and it certainly hides pretty much all of it. But it's so funny that, I don't know, felt like a small world there.
Yeah, it's interesting.
So in this moment, okay, you have acute appendicitis, says the doctor. I'm going to call an ambulance. You're going to go to the hospital immediately, and we're going to save your life. Houdini refuses.
I knew it. This man's pride's getting in the way now.
Absolutely. This is the collapse of the dying star of hubris, one might say, because he reportedly said, and this feels a little too on the nose, quote, "I'll do this show if it's my last," end quote.
Could be a little fancified there, but...
Right. Could be exaggerated. But it does feel like his type of perspective, no, I'm not going to the hospital.
Yeah, especially where he's at right now, it definitely seems like, for lack of a better phrase, like gone off the rails a little bit.
Sure.
You know,
sure.
he's going to shows, watching, and then, hello everyone, it's me, and like this is how it's
me.
done, and it's like that's kind of stepping out of lines, over the top, and it does line up with the whole like, no, I am me, I am him, I'm going to do this.
I am him.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do this. So, yeah.
We'll dissect the punch and kind of his approach in a little bit here, but you're kind of getting into it. Like, I think it was his ego that he didn't want to go to the hospital because he was like, no. It was just from punches. I'll be fine, is kind of what he's saying. And the show does go off without a hitch despite his pain. And then after his show, he checks into the hotel, still refusing medical treatment. However, his wife, Bess, demands that he is rushed to the nearby hospital. Someone outside of him needed to be there to be like, no. We're going to the hospital now, hun. He's admitted to the hospital on October 24th, and he undergoes emergency surgery to remove the appendix. However, it had already ruptured and caused severe peritonitis. Peritonitis is the inflammation of the abdominal lining, often caused by a ruptured appendix or stomach ulcers. There's a few causes for it. It's a serious condition that can often be fatal if not properly treated. And this is why appendicitis is so dangerous, because once the little appendix gets clogged up or injured and starts to swell, it becomes a runaway problem. Blood can't get to it, so it starts to swell more. And if it ruptures, it can lead to other things like sepsis. And that's actually what started to happen to him. Doctors continued to treat him, but the peritonitis actually led to sepsis, which, if you don't know, is defined as the body's overreaction and response to this infection, wherein instead of fighting the infection, the body starts to attack the healthy tissues and the organs. It is a whole mess. It is a terrible, terrible condition to be in. And eventually the sepsis did get too severe to the point where he dies on October 31st, 1926, which was Halloween, at the age of 52. His reported last words were, quote, "I'm tired of fighting," end quote.
Dang, so he gave up at the end, it seems like.
It seems like it. After many surgeries and medical thises and that's and medicines and what have you, I'm sure it's painful, it's exhausting. I can see it. It made even Houdini give up.
Yeah. So it was like, was it a I'm tired of fighting and then no more treatment type situation? Is that what we're assuming here?
It could be. Or it could just be, I'm tired of fighting. I know that this thing is winning over me. It's too severe even for medicine to correct the issue. And so, you know what? Maybe it's coming to peace. I'm tired of fighting. This thing has won over my body. It could be that. You know, it could be interpreted a lot of ways.
The unfortunate thing is he has so much time to realize the mistakes. But then also the fortunate thing is you had a lot of time to make amends and make peace and all that kind of stuff. But it really is kind of a rise and fall type situation. There's a bit of a spiral at the end. Some hubris got in the way. And this is someone that came from nothing. That's why you just, oh man. Yeah, I never want to be like that level of famous, man. It just, you can't go to a grocery store. You can't go somewhere. People are filming you, tracking where you're going. Like, I'm sure he, you know, there's another level. Like, how do you make friends at that point? You know what I mean?
How can you trust people? How can you have those true friendships? Are there ulterior motives? The good news is I'm sure he went into public all the time. And if the attention got too hot, you know, he snaps his fingers and he teleports outside. He's a magician.
That's true.
I assume that's how that works.
And I'm gone.
And he's gone. The masked magician never told me how to do that.
That's true. Break that one down, masked magician.
Yeah, break that one down. What an interesting show. I think he was finally demasked a few years ago.
I think so too. I think because we had this conversation before, but I think he was demasked.
Okay, so now it does seem pretty straightforward. This is kind of where I knew a few of the conspiracies, but ultimately it's like, okay, he was punched, he had appendicitis, and he died. What's there to conspire? What could possibly be the theories? Well, we're going to start in that very known, seemingly innocuous ground, the fatal blow. We're going to talk about that because then it very quickly opens up into a lot of other ideas, a lot of other conspiracies that some believe are pretty compelling, pretty interesting at least. And I do think that they are interesting. It goes from this fatal blow, bad timing. We talk about poisoning a little bit. We talk about revenge, and we talk about all the way up. We go to the top on this one.
Oh, sure.
Was he working with the president, and was this man a spy?
What the hell?
It goes. This one goes, man.
Okay. All right.
All right. So I'm going to bring it back to basics, and we're gonna let this tree blossom in front of us. Doctors first turned to the punches that Harry had received during that evening, right, as the potential cause of the appendicitis and his then untimely death. Of course, receiving so many very strong blows to the abdomen, one might assume that this trauma would lead to inflammation and what have you, but it turns out, and I was looking through a lot of medical journals and independent papers and things, but ultimately it seems that appendicitis caused by trauma is extremely rare. I saw anywhere from 0.3 to 0.9% of cases, or just kind of less than 1%. I've seen the History Channel talks about a study that says over a 20-year period, only a couple dozen appendicitis cases were caused by trauma. I was kind of blown away by this, but all sources seem to point this direction. I can't find a very strong percentage of cases that I'm confident in telling you.
Yeah.
But suffice to say, most appendicitis is caused by natural events in the body, but it's not impossible. Clearly, at least 24 people over 20 years, who's to say Houdini isn't one of them, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who have fallen to that, so it happens for sure. Rare, but it's just unfortunate, right? You lose someone so big to something so rare. It's like wild.
Yeah, and I think maybe the heart or the mind doesn't want to come to terms with that, but rare literally means it happens. Yes, it's rare, but it means it impacts somebody. Someone's out there suffering from trauma-induced appendicitis. But in 1926, this was the commonly accepted answer. This was widely accepted by everybody to be the origin of his death. Now, reportedly, and this is where the cracks of conspiracy start to open, Houdini's life insurance even had to pay Bess double indemnity for accidental death. That alone would be enough to drum up some of these ideas of motive over money, but that would, to me, mean that he kind of intentionally died so his wife could get a payout. Kind of questionable, but I can see why people would start to pull on that thread. Now, continuing on with the idea of appendicitis and this punch, some believe that the timing might have just been unfortunate coincidence, stating that, yes, okay, it's possible the appendicitis was trauma-induced, but it's also possible, if not more likely, the appendicitis was just unrelated, but that Houdini ignored the warning signs of stomach pain.
Oh, and then has an act where he gets punched in the stomach.
And so this is the likely scenario in my book, right? As Houdini's lifelong training to ignore pain, overcome limits, rely on his physical toughness, likely caused him to overlook the likely medical issue and instead saying, I refuse to let this student get a one-up on me and have it be in the papers that I went to a hospital because I took a punch, which kind of throws out all of my getting punched act, right? And so the hubris is actually the cause of not seeking medical attention. Thankfully, the wife, as always, is there to say, hun, doctor.
Yeah, even though he fought so hard not to, which is crazy.
It is wild. Yeah, just go. Truly just go. And it's wild to say that in America, in modern times. I recognize everyone's lived experience is completely different. But during my early 24 hours of appendicitis, I suddenly just, I felt a presence where I never felt a presence before. I felt uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel pain. And so I'm like,
It was unusual.
yeah, I'm just sick. I'll just tough it out, like a stomach bug. And man, can that stuff really ratchet up quick to the point where, oh, now I'm sweating and I can't bend over or stand up. And I'm just, so I can see it. And in my personal experience, I can see how one might want to just stomach the pain, but don't. If it just don't.
Yeah, especially because, like you said, you pointed out, it's like he's very used to being uncomfortable. His life is being comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
He's professionally uncomfortable.
Yeah, he really is.
Yeah.
And so you can see how you could ignore that. But also at the same time, towards the end, he very much neglected it, even, through doctor's recommendations. And so I also feel like there's a level of that could have been that he knew and he just discarded it regardless.
Yeah, you can't deny that level of denial. When the doctor says, no, you have this, and you're like, no, it's still the punches. I think you just got an excuse handed to you on a silver platter and get on and go to the hospital.
Yeah.
But, so like I said, it could be just unfortunate timing or it could be trauma-induced appendicitis, but this is where others have started to cook up kind of a sub-theory. The idea that Whitehead was connected to spiritualists and intended to cause harm, right? That it wasn't an accident, but he intended to go into that dressing room and really rough him up or take him kind of while he wasn't ready. In fact, some go so far as to say that maybe he was a plant or a hitman of some kind on behalf of the spiritualist community. You know, I will say the wrinkles in that sub-theory are that there's no documented paper trail that takes Whitehead and connects him back to any spiritualist groups. By all accounts, he was just an actual student at McGill University, maybe overheard Houdini's act, and maybe this was a fellow tough guy and wanted to see if he could be the one that made Houdini crumble.
Yeah, that's where I'm probably going to settle there. You know, just male testosterone.
And that's kind of what the act was.
Male ego. I'm the guy who's going to show him that, you know, you can't just take any punch.
Yeah. Now, there's a severe lack of evidence, like I said, to support any iteration of this particular sub-theory. But despite this, many have continued to believe that spiritualists, not just this student in particular, but spiritualists at large, had a hand in Houdini's death. And this kind of sets us up for at least the next theory, which, I don't know, these are wild, but they're interesting. I'm really curious to get your thoughts.
Okay.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Aura Frames. Mother's Day is coming up, and if you're still looking for a gift, why not frame what makes your mom special with Aura Frames? Our household absolutely loves Aura Frames. Whether it's a gift or just for yourself, it is the perfect way to remember any photo or any moment. You can put so many photos and little video clips onto it, and it kind of just goes through it, rotating randomly through. And so every time you look at it, you have a new memory, a new thing comes up, and what better way to celebrate Mom's Day than giving her the gift of memories with you two and your family, and maybe you sneak a few joke things in there. I've done that myself. Now, Aura Frames offers free unlimited storage, and you can add as many photos and videos as you want. You can preload photos before it ships, meaning your mom can see all the photos that you want her to see when she opens up the box, and you can keep adding at any time from anywhere. Share your photos and your videos with the free Aura app. Speaking of which, the Aura app reached #1 in the App Store on Christmas Day 2025. Make Mother's Day special with Aura Frames. Named #1 by Wirecutter, you can save on the gifts moms love by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, Task Force members can get $25 off their best-selling Carver mat frame with code REDWEB. That's AURA frames.com, promo code REDWEB. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. Life is a journey. Some days feel good, some feel overwhelming. Whatever's keeping you up at night, it's easy to feel like you have to figure it out all on your own. But no journey should be taken alone. Having someone with you to listen, understand, and support you can make all the difference. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, so use this opportunity to check in and understand where you are right now. You know, in my experience, therapy is a very personal journey, and I always find it's helpful to find the right person. And from my understanding, that's what makes BetterHelp special, is that it is easier and a little less daunting to begin your journey and to find the right person, because you need to be able to find someone who understands your unique needs and the way you want to express yourself. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the US. BetterHelp does the initial matchmaking work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. And it works with an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. You don't have to be on this journey alone. Find support and have someone with you in therapy. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's betterhelp.com/redweb. So according to the 2006 book entitled The Secret Life of Houdini, authors William Kalush and Larry Sloman believe Houdini's cause of death might have been more sinister. In this book, I'll say it up front, they address multiple options We're going to talk about this first one first. The pair, along with many others, believed his death was an organized assassination by some members of the spiritualist community. Although no one is named specifically, the pair believe it possible, writing in their book, quote, "If one were to suspect Houdini a victim of foul play, then the section of organized crime that was composed of fraudulent spirit mediums must be considered likely suspects," end quote. I think this might be begging the question. There's a logical fallacy here that I'm not going to label properly, honestly, but it feels like they set up a conclusion and are using reality to back into it. So they're basically saying, if he was a victim of foul play, then wouldn't the spiritualist community be the obvious ones to go after because they have the biggest motive to take him down because he's crumbling their whole empire? Like, sure, maybe if, but like, what's your evidence for the initial claim?
Right. Yeah. You need to have evidence for an initial claim in general. And also, yeah, there'd be a place to look, but we've seen people take bats to shins for ice skating. Competition brings out the ugly in people. And when you're at the tippy top, everyone's gunning for you. If anyone's gunning for anybody, it's you if you're at the top.
Right. All eyes on you. Someone will correct me in the comments. Task Force got that buff mind, but I feel like this is a logical fallacy because they're like, well, if our conclusion is correct that there was foul play, then who better than them, the spiritualist community? And I go, okay, right, but your whole premise is predicated on an assumption.
Yes.
Either way, it does go on to, again, the foundation is an assumption, but it does go on to kind of get interesting. So Kalash and Sloman claim that spiritualists have a history of poisoning their enemies. I'm taking their word for it because I didn't dive into this history of poisoning, but there was never an autopsy performed on Houdini to rule out other factors. I think they assumed, based on the medical community that served him, that he was poisoned. I'm struggling to believe that the doctors in the hospital all were behind this conspiracy to say, guys, it's not poison. It's definitely this.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, if that's their motive, then why is someone punching him in this way? It seems more of a gamble and not a guarantee. And then also, like, you're extending the rabbit hole at this point. The chain of people involved in said conspiracy.
And to kind of continue that rabbit hole thinking, as you were saying, they pointed out, remember Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? This was his good friend, and they had a falling out over specifically this, spiritualism. And so Doyle kind of becomes this unwitting representative of the spiritualist community in the author's eyes. They point out that, well, they had a falling out. Maybe he had a hand in poisoning Houdini, or at least he was part of threatening him. Because in their biography, Kalash and Sloman detailed a letter written by Doyle in 1924. This was 2 years before Houdini died, and obviously after their falling out. In it, Doyle writes that Houdini would, quote, "get his just deserts very exactly meted out. I think there is a general payday coming soon," end quote. And they're kind of basically saying like, oh, this is him basically confessing that he's going to come get him at some point.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. He's like, this is what's going to happen. These were his words of like swearing revenge. And I'm like, it sounds like a great story, but still, you
might as well say he cursed him, I think if I'm taking this threat at face value, Doyle so firmly believes in the spiritualist idea that by Houdini so loudly disrespecting it, that something spiritual would befall Houdini, that something unnatural or otherworldly might come to him, right? Like that he would be punished by this idea. And so, like, I don't think that this is Doyle saying that he's going to do anything. I think that he's just saying, you're going to get your comeuppance by so wildly disrespecting this thing that I so vehemently believe in and respect. That's kind of how I see it. Now, Kat also included here, and I didn't do a deep dive on this, so it feels a bit generic to say, but supposedly spiritualists were also known to favor arsenic as a poison. So apparently there's a history of poisoning, and arsenic is that poison of choice. And while it's impossible to know without an autopsy report, some have theorized that Houdini actually died of arsenic poisoning, or that the arsenic caused his appendicitis, because apparently symptoms of arsenic poisoning include severe stomach pain and vomiting, which can seemingly mimic the symptoms of appendicitis. Though again, was his team of doctors chosen by this cabal of spiritualists that poisoned him? Or were they the ones that poisoned him?
Yeah,
it's missing that.
You involve so many people, it becomes such a huge, big conspiracy. It's hard, man. It's hard.
Again, it's fascinating, but again, just being honest with it, it's not passing the vibe check for me.
Yeah. It reaches, it gets to the point where the majority of it is reaching, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
And it's outweighing. And so it's difficult at that point for me to like put a lot of faith and trust into that's what it is, you know?
I mean, it's fascinating. I would love to dig deeper. I would love to see something more tangible if you're really going to continue on with that conversation. But remember, the book came out in 2006. The timing of this next piece is what I think helped make it at least feel a little bit more valid for people, because it's reported that even Houdini's great nephew, George Houdini, asked for his body to be exhumed in March of 2007, but was denied in suspicion that his request might have been aimed at promoting the book, or that there might have been some sort of backdoor deal that he was going to get paid by the authors, because exhuming the body would lend legitimacy to this claim rather than searching truly for answers. But yeah, exhuming the body 80 years after his death to search for poison, it seems pretty extreme. But to me, it seems that George might have just been simply convinced by this book of this theory and wanted to use his familial ties to explore it. Or maybe he was paid off, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but it's just such a rabbit hole.
Or are they hiding it by not exhuming him?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is like, I mean, yeah, you could go through the process and everything, but also what else is there? You know what I mean? If he was so far past, it's more so to just have a cemented piece of info in his history as opposed to finding the culprit. Whoever did this, they got away with it. And there's no finding out. It's like poison. Okay, cool. Poison by who? Right? Like we don't,
right.
You're not going to get any further than he was poisoned. So I at this point, let him rest.
It assumes the answer and goes from there. I think what's interesting though is that this book kind of takes a multi-pronged approach. They talk about this poisoning, but then also a little bit more faithful to the title of the book, which is The Secret Life of Houdini, comes this next theory. And I knew of this theory, I didn't know all the details, but knowing how I feel about their last idea and kind of how I can't help but poke holes at it, I'm very curious to see how this one goes with you. Was Houdini a spy? Was he involved in espionage? Kalash and Sloman have theorized that Houdini might have engaged in international espionage. They believed this was why he decided to take his act to Europe, not because he was becoming this world-famous, world-renowned magician and performer, but because he had information to share and deal. As his career picked up in the early 1900s, it is said that he went to Europe to become an informant. They stated that he gave information to German police about wanted criminals and provided unspecified information to Scotland Yard. Others believe that Houdini was a spy, but not for any particular European nation. Rather, they believe that he served as an intelligence officer instead for America. Houdini was reportedly good friends with Franklin Roosevelt, and this would be prior to his presidency. Although it's unclear exactly when, sometime in the year 1900, a Russian spy stole a copy of, quote, the cipher of the Department of State, end quote, while working at the US Embassy in Moscow. Roosevelt was reportedly furious about this particular incident and then asked Houdini, who was in Moscow at the time, to report on anything suspicious he may have seen or heard. Roosevelt was angered as this theft kind of represented the breakdown in the nation's security, exposing valuable information to our enemies, a tale as old as time. And at the time, Roosevelt was vice president to President William McKinley. Before I finish and continue here, it's possible if he knew Roosevelt to that extent that, yeah, maybe he asked a favor, like, hey, if you hear or see anything as you're in the upper echelons of society over in Moscow, let me know. I don't know if that means he was just a forever spy, but I love the idea.
Yeah, I mean, when you were first talking about it, I was sitting here thinking like, what do you mean? You know what I mean? This guy's a performer. What do you mean? But, when you have that level of fame, you do get access to certain things. You know what I mean? People give you access because they want to be near you, they want to be around you, all that kind of stuff. And okay, sure. And then I'm like, well, how's he going to get involved with the government, all that kind of stuff? But you're right. That's a good point. The government could literally just be like, oh, hey, if you hear something, let us know. You know what I mean? It doesn't even have to be like, wear this wire and find a way to get inside this person's house. They're going to be here at this like extreme spy stuff. It could literally be as much as like, hey, you hear some stuff? We'd like to know about it.
You think he's at one of his performances and he sees somebody in the audience and he goes, ha ha! And he rips off his mustache and he goes, I got you now, John Russia. And then he runs off with a manila folder or something.
I got all your secrets.
I got him. My private performance for John von Russia. I could see it. If he's got ties to Roosevelt, I think it's possible that it was more of a casual, hey, if you see something, like you said, say something, let me know. And a lot of people do feel that way. That maybe he was more of an observer rather than an official dedicated spy under the guise of, he's doing some wild stuff and being very flashy for a spy, but maybe he's just hidden in plain sight. Regardless, it's believed that at some point in some way, he may have potentially passed valuable information. And from a very casual understanding of this relationship with Roosevelt, I could see that being possible. You're right. Famous people get into rooms, and not being a politician maybe is the perfect Trojan horse, and he shakes hands and signs babies all across the world, and he hears things, and maybe that's of value to the president and the vice president. Who knows? Now, it is said that most of this evidence is quite circumstantial for this theory, and I believe it. However, former CIA Deputy Director John McLaughlin has stated this with regards to this matter, quote, magic and espionage are really kindred arts, end quote. And to that, yes, could you take that at face value and say, yes, the illusions being one thing, showing another, what have you? Very kindred. But some people look at that and say, is that a confession? Did Houdini do more?
It's not as far-fetched as I thought it would be.
Right.
Yeah. So
it makes me think, though, why is the poison theory so locked in on the spiritualists? I haven't read the whole book, so, maybe there's an excerpt that says, the poison seems much more likely a premise to go with the spy part. Russia retaliating, saying, oh, you stole state secrets, we're going to poison you. Like, that feels way more logical.
Yeah, that does feel way more logical than this huge, chain of, paying off so many people or so many people being involved with the whole spiritualist, group or whatever.
Well, we're kind of closing out, but we're not done. There's still a lot of intrigue left. And the biggest one, and this is something I've always known about, but since you don't know a lot of these details, I'm ready to blow your mind. So before his death, whether it was days before or weeks or years, Houdini makes a promise to his wife. He looks at Bess and he says that he is going to try his best to communicate with her from beyond the grave. He told her that he would deliver a very specific message. Quote, Rosabelle, believe. End quote. And this would be almost his final trick, because if he's going to die, he wants to die in a way that could either A, prove that life can exist and communicate from the other side, or B, it's one final act to prove that these seances are nothing but a show. Isn't that wild?
Dang.
What a baller move.
He's petty even from the grave, dude.
Kind of petty.
It's kind of petty.
Yeah. It's kind of petty, but that's kind of balling too.
You know what I mean? But he's doing it with style. You know what I mean?
He's doing it with style. Here's the thing. Bess took that seriously, okay? She attends regular seances for the 10 years following his death before she finally gives up. And she, equally ballin', she says this, quote, 10 years is long enough to wait for any man, end quote. So, if basically he hasn't said anything in these 10 years, if Houdini of all people can't cross to the other side, I've waited long enough.
Good point. That's a good point. If anyone was to be able to do it, it would be Houdini, but here we are.
Some believe that he could do it, but as a final dead jab to the spiritualist community, he refused. And that's why he didn't deliver this message, because he is going to, like, this guy spends his whole life falsifying evidence. He's a practical magician. He wants to perform stunts. Even if he's wrong, I would believe that he would want to shatter our minds and go, oh my God, he's here.
100%. You want to show it off, the ego, you know what I mean?
So I wonder, at all these seances, what the mediums were saying of Houdini, if they were brave enough to say that Houdini was saying anything. Because she never told anybody this until she gave up for the search. She basically had a secret password that if any medium came to her and said, Rosabelle, believe, she would know that it was from him.
Oh, yeah. That's smart.
Right. And so the fact that no medium was ever able to say something like that, I'm really curious what they did try to say. If they could, like muster up the courage to say, oh yes, I'm getting an H name, a Houdini. Yes, he's saying, Bess, I was wrong. It's all real. Oh, that's my husband's voice, but not what he would have said.
Yeah. What's the key word? What's the key word here? I need to hear. I need to know.
Now, interestingly, fans far and wide of Houdini still hold an annual seance on Halloween in an attempt to contact Houdini on the day he died. But overall, Harry Houdini is credited as one of the most famed and innovative magicians of all time, and I think that goes without any debate. And I do want to end here. I know, like, we're kind of at the end of the episode, but I promise this to you. I have the link to a video. It's maybe only a minute, so I'll let you kind of click on that and live annotate what you're seeing. But this is Harry Houdini escaping a straitjacket, hung upside down on a street corner.
Okay, got a little black and white footage here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, he's just out there in public. He's being hung upside down.
Like that shaky frame rate?
Shaky frame rate is way up there. Tons of people in the street watching him. He is shaking. He's rattling around, man. There's a lot of faith in that rope. And
yeah, he does.
Jeez, you would just fall straight on his head. This is crazy. He's like doing some ab work here.
Yep. Reaching to his ankles.
Now he's got his hands on his legs. He's swinging around violently. He's got the coat off and his hands are free.
Dun, da, dun.
Dun. Wow. Like a whole city block packed.
It's so fascinating to see the crowd.
Wow.
So Task Force, we'll put this in the description if you want to take a look. Otherwise, you can just search on YouTube, Harry Houdini, and there's various films digitized on the platform. But
yeah, he just did his thing. Just out in the street, big performance, lots to turn out.
Yeah, very much like Elvis, Michael Jackson, Beatles level. You know, it's Houdini mania, baby.
Yeah, everyone's out there for him. Everyone wants to see. It also just seems like, a little bit of people are like, what if he fails? I won't be here to see that.
Oh, totally.
It's
Absolutely.
kind of like the messed up version of why you're attending, but.
Oh, I bet. Man, I'm still thrown. Not a lot of people have the cojones to go by the name they gave themselves at 13, but this guy did.
And dang, it's cool that there's just like video footage out there.
That's what makes this extra cool. I mean, obviously film and photographs go back far enough, but he was that famed and those movies exist. And it's just cool to have that, as you say, tangible look back at this just famous guy. But now we come to a close on Harry Houdini. I've blown some minds of people who didn't know about the conspiracies going around about his death and how he did die pretty young. I think it's maybe a boring tale in the reality of all things, but of course the intrigue is still fascinating, and the ideas that people have kind of thrown out there to answer for how such a big star could fall so early, it's bound to happen. Shout out to Task Force member Chris Martin for being the newest Task Force member. Thank you for joining the crew over at redwebpod.com. And of course, our buff scientists of the week. It's a couple. They have a wombo combo name. It's Sam and Trish Baker. Thank you guys both very much for being one just combined buff scientist. And then, of course, our squonks of the week are Broman, Clint from PS3, Tucker Did It, and Brett O'Meara, just to name a few. You guys are all wonderful and awesome. Thank you so much. Fredo, any final thoughts on Houdini?
This is a great episode. There's just so many different layers. Things progressed. I just never know. It was such a vivid life that he lived.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to take something that I know on paper and just blow your mind with how far it goes. All the details that are just hidden under it all.
Like everyone, like you talk about that. I talk about this a lot. Everyone might know, like this example, Harry Houdini. But do you know something about him aside from he was a magician? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so and even then, it's not like a couple sentences. Like we have a whole episode, and there's so many different things, you know. And as soon as we were harping on one thing, it moved to another, and then another. So it's very fascinating.
I think the one thing that I really didn't know out of this, his name was Eric Weiss. That blew my little mind.
You just got good names across the board.
Yeah, I think he started off strong.
And then I mean, he didn't even need to change his name, to be honest.
I think his brother also changed his name. Hardin became kind of the name that stuck with that side of the family, but he was also a performer. So he teamed up with his brother for a little bit, Dash. We talked about him. And then he goes off to become a performer himself. And so I think he saw through his brother that he's like, I got a gift. And yes, a lot of that gift is physical prowess and stamina and things, but it's also knowing how to present it and what have you. And maybe that's why he wanted to, teach. But glad he didn't stick to teaching, because it wasn't until after that he really becomes the Houdini that we know and love now. But thank you all so much, Task Force, to listening to yet another episode. Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday to blow your mind with yet another mystery.